So imagine this, right? You spend like all spring working on your yard. You're out there every weekend.
Yeah, every weekend.
Yeah, you're overseeding, you're top dressing, you're really dialing in your soil amendments.
Right.
And you go to bed on, let's say, a Tuesday night, and you're looking out the window at this perfect, lush, just pristine green lawn.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a fairway. You feel amazing about it. And then you wake up on Wednesday morning, you take your coffee to the window, and it's just gone.
It's just a completely devastated landscape.
Literally decimated overnight. I mean, you are staring at these massive, greasy, blackened patches of dead turf that they were not there when you went to sleep.
No, they weren't.
It feels like a magic trick, but, the absolute worst kind.
It really does. It's basically a botanical heist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the speed of it is what always catches people completely off guard,
Yeah, totally.
Because we are so conditioned to think of plant problems as these slow, gradual creeping processes. Like a leaf turns yellow over a week, right?
Right.
Or a branch slowly droops.
Mm-hmm.
But this is immediate, and it is catastrophic.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring some incredibly entertaining, but honestly, kind of terrifying material today.
Terrifying is the right word.
Yeah. We're looking at this brilliant breakdown written in the style of, like, a bad employee spotlight.
I love this framing.
It's so good. It's like a corporate performance review for a rogue landscaping worker. And the subject of this review is something called Pythium Blight.
The absolute fastest lawn destroyer on the payroll.
Exactly. So that is our mission today. We are going to figure out exactly how this rapid destruction happens, the underlying biology of why it happens so incredibly fast, and most importantly, how you can change your management strategy to stop it before it clocks in for a shift on your property.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. I mean, let's look at the resume of the worst employee you could possibly hire.
Right.
Because this thing, it doesn't just show up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a very specific, perfectly mismanaged work environment.
Yeah, and the framing of this breakdown is just hilarious, even if the reality is a total nightmare. So, looking at Pythium Blight's resume, under years of experience, it literally just says, every humid North Carolina summer.
Yep.
And the overall performance review, immediate termination recommended. I mean, if there were an Employee of the Month award for destroying lawns, this thing would take the trophy every single year.
Hands down. Every year.
But it has a very specific type of target, right? It loves cool season grasses. We are talking about your tall fescues and your perennial ryegrasses.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I want to dig into the biology right away because, well, this always feels a bit counterintuitive to me. Why do these massive attacks on cool season grasses happen specifically when the weather gets incredibly hot?
Yeah, that is the crux of the entire issue, honestly. And it really comes down to how these specific plants are biologically wired.
Okay.
So cool season grasses, like tall fescue, utilize a specific photosynthetic pathway. They're what we call C3 plants.
Right.
And they evolve to thrive in moderate temperatures, mostly in the spring and fall. So when you subject them to a brutal, sweltering summer, their biology essentially just starts working against them.
Because it's just too hot for that specific photosynthetic engine to run efficiently.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Once temperatures climb into the, upper 80s and 90s, an enzyme they use for photosynthesis actually starts grabbing oxygen instead of carbon dioxide.
Oh, wow.
It's a process called photorespiration. So instead of creating energy, the plant is suddenly burning through its stored energy reserves just to survive the afternoon heat.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. The grass is literally exhausting itself. It's starving, it is stressed, and its natural immune defenses just plummet.
Wow. So the plant is already on the ropes, just desperately trying to survive July.
Exactly.
And that's exactly when Pythium Blight decides to clock in. The material we're looking at outlines this employee's absolute favorite working conditions. It says heavy afternoon thunderstorms followed by warm, incredibly humid nights. And there is a very specific temperature threshold mentioned in the source nights where the temperature stays above 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes, that 65-degree nighttime threshold is critical. Especially when you pair it with high humidity.
Okay.
Because when the temperature stays that warm overnight, the dew point is incredibly high. The ambient air is just completely saturated. It cannot absorb any more moisture.
So it just sits there.
Right. So if you had an afternoon thunderstorm, or, worse, if you ran your irrigation system, that water has nowhere to go. It doesn't evaporate.
Right.
You end up with this continuous film of moisture covering every single grass blade, and it just stays there for 10 or 12 hours.
Wow. So if it thrives on that overnight surface moisture, then going out and heavily watering your lawn at like 9 p.m. on a humid July night is
Yeah.
essentially setting out a welcome mat and a midnight snack for a burglar.
A buffet, really.
Yeah. I mean, you are completely manufacturing the environment it needs to pull off the heist.
What's fascinating here is that you aren't just inviting it in, you're building the exact biological infrastructure the pathogen needs to operate.
Right.
Because you have a stressed, exhausted, cool season plant whose immune system is totally offline, trapped in a hot, suffocating, wet environment. You are serving up the most vulnerable possible host on a silver platter.
Which brings us to the actual symptoms, because it really does look like a crime scene out there.
It really does.
We know Pythium Blight loves these suffocating wet conditions, but the visual symptoms are honestly kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
It's not just, brown grass, the blades turn blackened, you get these circular areas that just suddenly collapse in on themselves like the grass just gave up. And if you get out there early in the morning when the humidity is still peaking, you can actually see this cottony white webbing sitting right on top of the collapsed turf.
Yeah, it looks very similar to cobwebs.
Yeah.
Or like a fine, dense cotton candy just spreading across the surface.
Yeah.
And the term you used earlier, greasy, is incredibly accurate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the reason those patches look greasy or water-soaked is because the pathogen is actively releasing enzymes that dissolve the plant's cell walls.
Oh, wow.
So the rigid structure of the grass blade is literally rupturing, and the cellular contents are just leaking out. It's a complete structural collapse.
But hold on, if we are talking about something that leaves white webbing and causes cellular collapse, I mean, I've always thought of lawn fungi as a slow creep.
Right, yeah.
Spores blow in on the wind, they settle, they take days or even weeks to establish. How is it biologically possible for this level of complete structural destruction to happen literally overnight?
Well, that is the massive plot twist in all of this. And it's exactly why so many homeowners lose their lawns.
Okay.
We keep calling it a fungus. The symptoms look like a fungus. It produces webbing like a fungus. But Pythium Blight isn't actually a true fungus at all.
Okay. This is where things get wild. If it's not a true fungus, what is it?
It is classified as an umiceid.
An umiceid. So we're dealing with a water mold. That completely changes the paradigm. Like if it's a water mold, it's not spreading by spores blowing in the wind like mold on bread. It's behaving more like an algae or a seaweed pathogen.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction between a true fungus and a water mold explains absolutely everything about how it attacks.
Right.
Umicides are this incredible example of convergent evolution. They evolved to look and act like fungi because they occupy a similar ecological niche. But genetically, they are much closer to brown algae and kelps.
That is so weird.
Right. And because Pythium is a water mold, it doesn't blow in the wind. It relies entirely on standing water to spread. And when I say spread, I mean it literally swims.
That is just a terrifying mental image. It swims across the lawn.
It does, yeah. When you have that heavy summer rain or when you overwater at night and create that continuous film of moisture across the grass, the pathogen releases these specialized spores called zoospores.
Zoospores, okay.
And these zoospores actually have two tiny tails called flagella. One flagellum acts like a whip to propel it forward, and the other has these tiny hairs to help it steer.
Are you serious?
I am. They use these flagella to actively swim through that film of water from blade to blade.
So it's an aquatic attack on a terrestrial plant.
Exactly.
And it's not just floating randomly, right? It's actively navigating.
Exactly. They use something called chemotaxis. So remember those stressed, exhausted grass plants we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the ones burning all their energy.
Right. Well, they leak amino acids and chemical exudates from the roots and crowns when they're stressed like that.
Oh, no.
And the zoospores can actually smell those chemical signals in the water.
You're kidding?
Nope. They lock onto the signal, actively swim toward the most vulnerable stressed plants, attach themselves, and just begin rapidly dissolving the tissue.
Wow.
That targeted swimming mobility is exactly why a perfectly green lawn can be utterly decimated in 12 hours. The pathogen is literally surfing across your yard while you sleep.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. And, knowing that it is a hyper-fast swimming water mold and not a slow-moving fungus, well, it completely flips the script on how we have to fight it.
It really does.
Because we can't just react to this. If you see the blackened, greasy grass, I mean, that grass is already dead. The heist is over.
Yet they got away with it.
So to actually fire this employee, Our entire defense strategy boils down to draining the pool. We have to fundamentally alter the environment so this thing cannot swim.
Environmental management is the only reliable defense here. You have to take away its aquatic highway.
Right. And our first line of defense is obviously controlling the water we introduce. The recommendation here on the source is to shift all irrigation exclusively to the window between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Yeah, and that timing is incredibly deliberate.
Why is that?
Well, you want to provide a deep, thorough soaking right before the sun comes up. The water penetrates deeply into the root zone, which builds plant resilience, but then the daytime heat and sunlight immediately get to work evaporating all that excess surface moisture.
Oh, I see.
So by the time the sun sets, the grass blades are completely dry. You are ensuring there is no water film for the zoospores to swim through overnight.
But what if the water just won't go down? I mean, I know a lot of people struggle with compacted clay soils where the water just sits on top for hours.
Oh yeah, clay's tough.
Right, and I usually rent one of those heavy mechanical core aerators that rips actual plugs of dirt out of the yard to help it drain. But I'm seeing liquid aeration highlighted here as a solution for soggy lawns in the summer. How can spraying a liquid possibly poke holes in compacted clay to drain that standing water?
It's a great question, and it really comes down to soil chemistry rather than physical force.
Okay.
When you have compacted clay, you have these incredibly fine soil particles that are tightly bound together by electrochemical charges. They form this impermeable sheet.
Right.
Well, liquid aeration products contain highly concentrated humic and fulvic acids, along with advanced wetting agents. When you apply those liquids, those large molecules interact with the negative charges of the clay particles.
So it's breaking the chemical bonds that are holding the clay together.
Exactly. It alters the polarity, causing those tiny clay particles to agglomerate or clump together into slightly larger pieces.
How interesting.
Yeah, and when they clump up, it creates microscopic fissures and pore spaces between them. You're chemically restructuring the soil into a more porous sponge.
That is so cool.
Right. Water immediately filters down through those new micropores instead of sitting on the surface. Plus, you don't have to cause the mechanical trauma of ripping up the roots in the middle of a stressful summer heat wave.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we get the water off the surface chemically, but now even if the soil drains well, you still have to deal with humidity hanging in the air. We need to create airflow. The breakdown suggests aggressively trimming back shrubs and low-hanging tree limbs around the perimeter of the yard.
Yeah, think about a bathroom after a really hot shower.
Okay.
If you leave the door closed and the exhaust fan off, the mirrors stay fogged, the walls are dripping wet, and the humidity just hangs there for hours.
Right.
That is exactly what happens to your lawn when it's walled in by dense overgrown shrubs and low canopy trees. The morning sun can't hit the dew to burn it off, and the breeze can't get through to sweep that humid air away.
Well, that's a great way to picture it.
Yeah, trimming those lower branches is the landscaping equivalent of throwing open the bathroom door and turning on the fan.
So we're draining the pool and clearing the air.
Exactly.
That covers the environment. But what about the grass itself? Because we talked about not stressing the plant out mechanically. And the golden rule for mowing during this time is to never remove more than 1/3 of the grass blade. And above all else, keep those mower blades sharp.
Yes, a dull mower blade doesn't slice the grass, it bludgeons it.
Yikes.
It just rips the top off. And that leaves a jagged, frayed edge. Biologically, that frayed edge loses massive amounts of moisture, and it takes days to heal. It's basically a gaping wound.
Right, right.
But a sharp blade creates a clean, surgical cut that the plant can seal up in hours. When there is a water mold actively swimming around looking for chemical signals of distress, the absolute last thing you want is millions of open, weeping wounds across your yard.
Yeah, you are just bleeding out in shark-infested waters at that point.
Exactly.
Now, there's a massive warning in this material about fertilizer, and it's a trap I think a lot of people fall into. The instinct, when you see your grass struggling in the brutal summer heat, is to feed it.
Sure.
But we are heavily warned against throwing down high nitrogen fertilizers during this window.
It feels wrong to withhold nutrients, I know.
Oh.
But applying heavy nitrogen in the summer is disastrous.
The way I think about it, heavy nitrogen fertilizer is designed to force the grass to push out a massive amount of lush, green, rapid growth.
Right.
Doing that in the middle of a brutal, humid July is basically like feeding giant scoops of pure sugar to a hyperactive toddler right before bedtime.
I love that analogy.
I mean, you are artificially forcing the plant into this frenzied state of tender, rapid new growth at the exact moment its biology is telling it to rest and conserve energy.
Yes.
And that tender, vulnerable new tissue is exactly what those zoospores find most delicious.
That is a phenomenal analogy, honestly, because you are exhausting the plant's final energy reserves to create the softest, easiest possible tissue for the umi seed to attack.
It's just a bad idea all around.
Stick to balanced fertility programs, maybe utilizing potassium to help with stress tolerance,
Yeah.
but absolutely do not dump nitrogen just to force the yard to look artificially green in July.
Okay, so we have our preventative strategy. Water early, improve drainage chemically, clear the airflow, mow sharp, and cut the nitrogen. But let's say the worst happens. A listener wakes up, they look out the window, and they see the webbing. The bad employee is actively destroying the property.
It happens.
Based on everything we just discussed about how this pathogen operates, I assume the very first emergency move isn't to wash it away, it's to instantly shut down the water supply.
Completely. If you see active Pythium Blight, you go to your irrigation controller and you turn it off immediately.
Right.
Unless you are in a severe cracking earth drought where the crown of the plant will literally die from dehydration, do not add a single drop of moisture to that yard. You have to dry out the aquatic highway to stop the zoospores from swimming.
And what about traffic? If I have this wet, infected area and I let my dog run through it, or the kids play on it...
You are just going to spread it manually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those microscopic swimming spores will stick to your shoes, the dog's paws, or the wheels of your lawnmower. If you walk from the infected zone into the healthy, dry sections of the yard, you are acting as the transport vehicle.
That's terrifying.
You have to quarantine the area immediately. Just stay off the grass entirely.
Okay, cut the water, quarantine the yard. Now we need to talk about chemical intervention, because this is where that incredible biological twist from earlier becomes the most important fact of the entire deep dive. The fungicide catch.
Oh, yes. This is where so many people waste hundreds of dollars and still lose their lawn.
Right.
Because Pythium is a water mold, an uniseed, and not a true fungus. All those common off-the-shelf lawn fungicides you buy at the big box hardware store, they are almost entirely ineffective.
You could literally dump gallons of a standard lawn fungicide on it, and the zoospores will just swim right past it and keep eating.
Exactly.
Why? What is the chemical disconnect there?
It all comes down to cellular structure. Standard lawn fungicides, things containing azoxystrobin or propiconazole, they're specifically engineered to target and disrupt a compound called ergosterol.
Okay.
And ergosterol is a major component of fungal cell walls. If you destroy the ergosterol, the fungus dies.
Makes sense.
But remember, umi seeds evolve from a completely different branch of the tree of life. Their cell walls aren't made of chitin and ergosterol. They're made of cellulose, just like plants.
So the chemical weapon you're spraying is looking for a target that simply doesn't exist in a water mold.
Exactly. You're firing blanks. You absolutely must use professional-grade products containing specific active ingredients like mefenoxam or propamylcarb that are explicitly labeled for umi-seed control.
Right.
And this is often where it makes sense to call in a professional, because accessing that specific chemistry and getting the application timing precisely right is pretty difficult for a homeowner.
Yeah, I can imagine. And once the chemical intervention works and the pathogen is neutralized, you're left with the cleanup. Pythium doesn't just make the grass sick, it completely dissolves it.
It's gone.
Right, so you're looking at raking out the dead material and overseeding those bare patches in the fall to rebuild the turf you lost. Which highlights the ultimate takeaway here, right? Proactive, preventative environmental management is infinitely cheaper and vastly less stressful than reacting to a microscopic crisis.
Absolutely. Setting your irrigation timer for 4 a.m. costs nothing. Having to hire a professional to blanket your property in specialized umiceticides and then buying premium grass seed to repair the devastation, that is an incredibly expensive lesson in taxonomy.
It really is. Which brings us to the end of our rogue employees evaluation. Let's look at the final performance review for Pythium Blight.
Let's hear it.
Speed, they give it 5 stars. Reliability, unfortunately 5 stars. I mean, if you build the humid, wet conditions, it never misses a shift.
Yeah,
This player, 1 star. Recommendation for future employment on your property, absolutely not.
Hard pass.
So what does this all mean? The performance review wraps up with this incredibly sharp concluding thought. They write, healthy lawns don't happen by chance. They happen by choice.
I love that.
I love that perspective, too. You choose when you run your sprinklers. You choose the sharpness of your mower blades. You choose whether to starve or artificially pump your grass full of sugar in the heat of summer. You are the manager of this microenvironment, and you dictate who gets to clock in.
It's a highly empowering way to look at landscaping. But, for me, the element of this deep dive that I'll be thinking about for a long time is the biological deception.
The fact that it's masquerading as a fungus while swimming like an algae.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The key to defeating Pythium Blight wasn't just working harder or spraying more chemicals. It was realizing that we had fundamentally misclassified the enemy.
Wow, yeah.
As long as you treat it like a slow-moving true fungus, applying standard fungal remedies, you will lose every single time. The moment you correctly identify it as a water mold, your entire strategy pivots to taking away the water and targeting the cellulose.
The power of accurate identification.
Right. And it leaves me with this fascinating question, something for you to mull over after you finish listening today. Think about your own life, beyond just your yard.
Okay.
How many other lingering problems in our homes, in our businesses, or even in our personal habits are we failing to resolve simply because we have fundamentally mislabeled what they actually are?
Oh, that's deep.
What else in our lives is completely immune to all our exhausting efforts, just because we've put it in the wrong category?
That is a wild, brilliant thought to end on. Make sure you check your labels. And, for the love of everything, don't run your sprinklers at midnight. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Pain in the Grass podcast, sponsored by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte, Huntersville, your go-to name in turf care for homeowners and businesses seeking beauty, quality, and reliability, powered by family and fueled by passion. Until next time, make sure to take care of that pain in the grass.